Yoshiyuki Tomino, the creator of Gundam, has had its stigma attached to him for almost his entire work history within the fandom. He's known as Kill 'em all Tomino, and there's a quote floating around with him saying, "If I didn't make anime, I'd be a serial killer," or something like that, which, I don't know, I just might not be able to find a source for it right now, but I've never really subscribed to this idea in the first place, that he's just some sort of murder hobo. And from what I can tell, neither did Tomino. Although he did say in a relatively recent interview, he used to put a lot of his frustrations in his work when he was younger. So what is he talking about? And why are people calling him Kill 'em all Tomino? The first thing a lot of people think about when they're reminded of the stigma is probably the brutal movie ending of Ideon. It's one of those films that are showed to new fans without context, just to mess with them, right? Like End of Evangelion got to be later on. But when someone actually recommends the TV show, they usually insist that, while sometimes the quality isn't the best, it's well worth it by the end, which I agree with. Sometimes the anime is kind of rough, but nothing can really top Ideon in certain areas. Anno himself lists it as one of his favorite anime, despite its roughness in the middle, which he admits to. Even Tomino says the story wasn't presented very good. Usually, this is used as kind of an indication to people that Tomino just got fed up and frustrated with the anime in some way, so he lashed out at his characters and made the obscenely brutal ending everyone knows it for. It was made right after Gundam, which was cancelled early despite all the love and care he obviously put into it. The original Gundam wouldn't get popular until many years later when he made the summary movie trilogy. Then Ideon was dropped as well, so the frustration would make sense. It was very highbrow sci-fi, so a lot of people just couldn't understand it at the time. But it spoke to Tomino's biggest personal reoccurring themes within his works. It's something you can tell he loved. But most of the Kill 'em all mythos comes from the later movies, which were made well after the initial TV airing. Within the span of time, he made the Gundam movie adaptation, which actually gave him all the success he lacked with the original airing. Then he made Zabungle, a light-hearted gag Wild West mecha. Although to be fair, he worked mostly on the beginning and end of the show. For the middle, he started to work on the Ideon movies, and gave Zabungle to a bunch of his colleagues, which is why the show kinda lacks in those areas when those guys try to add a lot of drama like Gundam and Ideon. Now there are good, serious parts of Zabungle, but it's best when the seriousness gets so extreme you can't help but laugh at the absurd lengths the characters go to for their motivations. That's the thing about Tomino, he's a goofball. So all that being said, this timeline doesn't really add up and point to a man frustrated with the industry and seeking change through fire, like someone like a Yamakan, right? There's something else going on here. In this video, I'll be talking about the history of the Kill 'em all Tomino mythos. A lot of people like to style Evangelion as being a frustration against otaku. They think the intense breakdown of character is somehow a jab at the fans of the show, or a jab at anime otaku, or something like that. But yeah, I don't buy that at all. Being otaku being synonymous with anime fans in Japanese pop culture only really began with the generation who came into EVA. Before the 90s, otaku was even more of just a slur for hardcore nerds who were into various topics. Just so happens, Anno was a hardcore anime otaku, and he was particularly a fan of Tomino's anime, of Ideon, where most of the inspiration of EVA came from, despite Anno just wanting it to be a light and easy standard mecha show like Go Wappa or something. It was this generation of fans that made it synonymous with anime, because of Evangelion in the first place. Hell, some of the original Gainax crew just wanted to turn it into a video game studio, or just work on model building. They were the guys who started and ran WonderCon, you know. During Royal Space Force, a lot of the important names were still back in Osaka, finishing up the film projects they started back there, like Return of Ultraman and Dai Nippon. It was an otaku club before it was an anime studio. Anime was just one of the things they did, and it was EVA that turned it into that anime studio. So this idea of Anno lashing out in personal vengeance against otaku, and EVA being this highbrow quote-unquote deconstruction of anime otaku where Anno tells you to go take a bath and go outside, just it's ludicrous to say the least.
男は風呂に入らなくても死にはしないんです。
Interestingly, there's a similarity to how some fans view Ideon, that the brutal things that happen in the end are a result of Tomino just lashing out against his audience, with a kind of personal revenge spectacle for the fans to enjoy laughing at as the body count keeps rising. But just like with EVA, this assertion misses the point. As a disclaimer, the following section will discuss spoilers for Space Runaway Ideon, so if you wish to watch it on your own without being spoiled, please skip ahead to this timestamp. Thanks, I'll see you there. Ideon was a show about a group of scientists unearthing giant machines built aeons past on an alien planet, supposedly built by a civilization that seemed to be wiped out. After studying it, it seems it runs off of an energy nobody can really understand. Over the course of the show, the unearthed machines become a source for conflict between the scientists who found it and everyone else throughout space. The reason being, it's a source of infinite energy. And in a sci-fi setting, infinite energy means infinite power, right? The Ide is a power to rule the cosmos, and just so happens to be a sentient being as well. The robot is actually a Lovecraftian old cosmic horror. It's awesome, as in awesome and terrible, like watching a nuclear blast. There never has been another robot that instills the same amount of awe within me. So the question throughout the show becomes, what do you do with a godlike being?
What does God need with a starship?
It's an extreme take on the super robot genre, made by the guy who just pioneered real robots. And the sentient robot's power is unleashed when something he can't forgive happens. You know, like a classic hero character with a passionate and the things that Ide hates the most is the pain of children. But an ancient cosmic deity cares not for mortal conflicts about power or pride or anything people consider important, right? The buff clan who attack are not the bad guys here. The bad guys are the evil adults on all sides, causing so much suffering. Who cares about clans or nations or blood in the face of such an ancient and awesome power? If you're a Marvel Comics fan, try to imagine Galactus, but he lends his power to the innocent. The Ide only sees children suffer, and it seeks to put an end to it. Fucking Demogoblin. Mass extinction events are Tomino's calling card, right? But the fans who just watched this, the lust for carnage and the brutality and noting the show just for the insane power levels of the robot is not really the point of it. In fact, it's the exact opposite of what the Ide wanted to tell us. The message of Ideon was to treasure childlike innocence, in spite of the harshness of the world. If you chose to skip the spoilers, welcome back. We were talking about children. Children are often important in a lot of Tomino shows, and it's not just because child characters are easier for the target audience to identify with. There are plenty of anime during this time with adult characters, but the children in Tomino anime are central to its common themes. Often they're righting the wrongs of the wicked world the adults left for them. It wasn't an uncommon theme for anime in his generation. Just look at any Matsumoto Leiji anime or Future Boy Conan. You have to understand Tomino was born in post-war Japan, so he got to see firsthand the shell-shocked, the bitter, the dejected adults of his time, living in a crushed Japan they helped create, right? Tomino's heroes are often children because they're the ones who can fight for the future. The often hot-blooded and brash street-fighting heroes of the time were so common because they have to destroy the crummy world the adults left behind. And it's been a common trope in anime ever since, even to this day. And Tomino's anime is the prime example of this trope. In his work, most of the adults are really awful to a really extreme degree. There's few who are kind. They create wars the children want no part in, but the hero has to fight regardless. And it's always a child's hot-blooded resolve that ends the conflict, which is supposed to usher in a new and better future for the world.
I chose my people. I chose Wakanda. Our future depended
You are wrong! All of you are wrong!
When asked about the future of Gundam, Tomino says, well, a lot of creators are kind of working on it right now, but personally, he thinks it has to be a story that offers hope for a new generation. Quote, it has to be a story with a message like, don't despair about the near future. That's the theme it must have. End quote. Instead of despairing about the present, it always has to be about the future. But to bring this video back to the question of the history of Kill 'Em All Tomino, we have to look a little deeper than Ideon. It wasn't the first time brutal events happened in his shows, and it certainly wasn't the last. The anime he made after Ideon was Zabungle. In this, the heroes become desert pirates and slaughter entire civilizations in the name of revenge. They upset the world order maintained by people literally called the Innocent. And it sells this to you like Jiron is completely justified in doing this somehow. But it's important to note the loss of the world that was before. A simple and straightforward world that took care of them is now gone, and the kids who destroyed it have to now take care of themselves. In Gundam, which was made just before Ideon, half the human population is wiped out before the show even begins. And the kids kill a lot more before the war is over. They develop trauma and lose their innocence along the way to do what is necessary to create a new and better future. But another show that's often brought up for jump-starting Tomino's mecha career even before Gundam was Zanbot 3. In this show, the Earth faces an apocalyptic alien invasion, and the heroes are shunned and treated by outsiders by the native Earthlings. Turns out the heroes are aliens who live on the planet and swear to protect it. You know, like Leisner or Dragon Ball or Superman or God Mars. But the aggression of the natives towards the heroes grows so much throughout the show that even after sacrificing so much and fighting so hard to finally save the Earth, the main character doubts if it was all even worth it. Humanity is saved, and he's actually treated like a hero, after being ostracized and bullied all his life. It's a bright and new future for the world and for our hero. But what about the cost? It's the sacrifice that's the common theme in Tomino's works. For Tomino, to be a hero there has to be a sacrifice involved. To end whatever evil in the show, a child has to sacrifice his own innocence and affect the world for the better with what he brings into it. But then the child who sacrificed his innocence later becomes the adult of the new world he helped establish, who then has to be confronted by new children all over again. So where does this cycle of violence stop? Well, the Ide is the ultimate endgame hero, isn't it? Tomino was asked in a recent interview to send a message to his fans all around the world. Tomino said this: "If there are those among you who started thinking about something because of Gundam, it's time you broke out of it. And if you can't find your answer, throw the question at the next generation and try and get an answer from them. That's the kind of adult we want to be." I think that the next generation, that is, children, will know why Gundam was depicted in the same way over and over again. That they will see something similar to human boundaries in it. I want you to break through those boundaries. Gundam struggles hard throughout the entire series to break them down. I would be grateful if you looked at it this way. He's talking about the human boundaries between generations, and the seemingly endless cycle of violence that perpetuates it. Tomino wants the adults of the world, those who grew up with Gundam, who saw the original, to just step aside, to stop being so arrogant, and give their questions to the children of the world to answer. Only this way humanity can continue to evolve into the spacefaring new types we're destined to be. Currently, Tomino is working hard on the G-Reco movies. But a lot of his older fans really don't like the show and think the man has just gotten completely crazy with it. But Tomino says the reason G-Reco is so different is because it's not Gundam. He decidedly made it not like Gundam. He says that after Turn A, everything in the series just borrows Gundam as a name, and that it's done and over with. That every new Gundam is just a rehash of what was done before. But Tomino wanted to make something new. Something where he says you can watch history being made. Something for a new generation, a brighter new world that we might not understand.
Guess you guys aren't ready for that yet, but your kids are gonna love it.
Tomino has recently stated he will be done making anime in about 3 years. He's really putting everything he has left into G-Reco, where he poses his lifelong questions to the new world. And in the process, destroy Eva and Demon Slayer, right? I hope you all watch his last works. The man is over 80, the same age as Osamu Tezuka was when Tomino stepped into the industry as a young, passionate, hotshot storyboarder. At the time, he was given a shot at directing one of Tezuka's stories. Umi no Triton was a very different anime than it was a manga because Tomino decided he'd do whatever the hell he wanted with it. Tezuka was very hands-off with his anime adaptations, and this gave the man almost complete freedom with it. He turned Umi no Triton into something we would see later in Gundam. Instead of a white base, Triton rides a white dolphin. Instead of a space war, there's an ocean war. Instead of a giant robot, there's a magical dagger, which turns out to be a pink energy weapon. There's even the Tomino staple slap scene. Triton was an orphan child that was raised by an old man in a fishing village. Turns out the kid's actually like a mermaid, heir to an ocean kingdom which was taken over by the bad guys, who are now attacking coastal cities and terrorizing the oceans. They attack Triton's home village, forcing him to give up his childhood and go on an adventure to become the hero the world needs. Just like the Zeon soldiers who attacked Side 7, Triton gives up his home. He learns courage. He gets ostracized by societies. He finds out he's not alone. He confronts evil. And at the end, he learns the truth. Turns out Poseidon, the god of the oceans who he's been fighting this whole time, is actually just a machine built by Triton's own people to give them the energy they need to survive. But the society was corrupt and stuck in an old way, cut off from the civilized world above. They practiced human sacrifice to the Poseidon machine, which gave it the energy needed to bestow eternal life for the elders of Atlantis. It was a civilization of ancient people, worshipping a machine they created. But Triton's family wished to stop this, and created the Olehan dagger, which has the power to slay the god they created and end the wicked world of the past. That's why Poseidon sent out the monsters all around the world, to find and kill any living Triton descendant, and destroy the dagger, so they can continue to live forever in peace under the ocean floor. So Triton was unwillingly drafted into a war he didn't even understand, because of the choices of adults made before he was even born. This was the old order of things. Poseidon was god of the ocean, right? And it will do its job to maintain this order regardless of human life. And the only way for Triton to stop it is to destroy Poseidon and genocide a whole race of people, his own race of people. It's very much a trolley problem. Without even knowing, he sacrifices his innocence to end the wicked world of the past, and he ushers in a new and bright future for the world without monsters terrorizing the oceans. And human civilization evolves as a result, taking our next step in closer communication and understanding. It's the first step to being new types. This is where the legend and the legacy of Kill 'Em All Tomino would start. It was never about murder hoboing his frustrations onto his characters. It was an optimistic striving for the future by destroying the wicked world of the past. How Tomino describes Ideon is, quote, "It's a story where even though humans and aliens have been annihilated in a battle, there's still hope," unquote. Tomino did what he did in these anime because he wants to show us this personal philosophy of his time to extreme and hot-blooded degrees. Whether you think that's criminal behavior or not, that's how this guy is. He's an extreme man, and he wants the world to be better than when he came into it. This has been Miracle. Thanks for watching, new types, and thank you to my patrons. Next time I'll be talking about a currently popular show, but first, maybe something a little different. Take it easy, everyone.